Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Mind Muscle Connection podcast. Today is a Q&A episode and I have questions on fat loss phase. But first, before I dive into that, I have my free Body Recomp checklist. So if you're interested in learning more about Body Recomp, what it is, how to do it, how to set it up, and the 10 things you need in a Body Recomp, then that checklist is for you. And again, the link to that is in the show notes. So go check that out there. So with that out of the way, let's dive into today's question. So again, today's going to be around fat loss phases in particular. And I had a couple interesting ones. One was from my wife, basically trying to troll me. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to take this and run with it and try and come up with a piece of content on this. So she said, how to lose weight with minimal movement and chocolate is the center of my diet. So again, it's my wife just trolling. She just thinks she's funny. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to give a stab at this. So what I would do in this situation, if you wanted to do this, you could totally do it, right? Because at the end of the day, to put your body in a position to lose fat, we need to be in a caloric deficit. Okay. So you could really do that with any types of food. Now, in saying that, as I'm going to dive into, your diet quality and what you do in that process can make things more challenging and it can make it more challenging, can make it tougher. And it's also what we do in that process is going to depend on where our body wants to prefer to use this energy from. Okay. So at the end of the day, we can really make up our diet of anything as long as our calories in and calories out are in check and we're in a deficit. In saying this, the main things I would do is first, okay, so if you want to do this, I would be making sure that you get in enough protein. So we would be finding ways to get in protein in your diet if you wanted to have your base of your diet be chocolate, okay? Because we need to get some protein in, because if we don't get protein in, you're obviously going to be in trouble there. Like now, when you're not getting in enough protein, we may find that we're going to lose some muscle in this process of being in an energy deficit. And protein is satiating, and one of the downsides of just eating a chocolate-based diet is it's not going to be very satiating there. And I would ideally like you to get some veggie in. So then that way, again, we can get a little bit more food volume, keep you feeling satiated, and get some micronutrients in and some fiber. Because again, if we just eat chocolate, we're not going to get a lot of fiber there. We could build a diet around chocolate, but we would still need to add in other things. We would need to add in some protein and some veggie. And then ideally, I would like you to get all my foundational supplements, right? So that's going to be a multi, it's going to be fish oil, it's going to be magnesium glycinate, vitamin D, and some creatine. If we can do that, we can make this work, and it's going to be better than just eating chocolate, right? Now, minimal movement, again, not going to be great for overall health, not going to be great for body composition. So we would ideally try and get 2 days minimum of resistance training. If we can only do one, that's fine. That's better than none. So that's how we would do that there. Just understand that you're not going to feel good by not moving a lot. Probably from a blood sugar standpoint, not going to be the greatest. And from a digestion standpoint, and just from a mental health standpoint, not going to be great. But on top of this now, so we have the bases in. Now from here, you're going to have to fight through a lot of hunger and cravings, just because you're likely, now if we supplement with the things I talked about for the foundation, your micronutrients should be in a better spot. But either way, like your food volume is going to be low, and you're going to be getting food that's tasty. And if you are losing weight and you actually get in a deficit, that's going to make you hungrier. So it's this like vicious cycle, right? Your energy is probably going to suffer partly from a lack of movement, but also you're just, again, like going to feel very depleted with this type of diet. And I would imagine you're going to have some sort of gut issues with the amount of chocolate that you would have. And yeah, just in general. So you're not going to feel great. And this would probably be done on a pretty low calorie amount and very low food volume amount. Now, again, we're going to save ourselves a little bit here by getting enough protein and fiber and things like that. And obviously we have to, protein and fiber is going to take up some calories. So now that's going to impact how much chocolate you actually have. And you're probably not going to have very much, just because of the fact that chocolate's pretty calorically dense. Also, we'd really want to be careful with having a ton of chocolate before bed, as it does have some caffeine in it. So you do need to be careful with that. But I would imagine you're going to be on a pretty low calorie diet because of the lack of movement. Again, protein's going to save us a little bit here. Hopefully maintaining muscle is going to save us a little bit here, but you're definitely going to be on a low food volume diet, and that's going to make hunger very challenging there. So again, this isn't ideal and not recommended, but we can make it work. If there's a will, there's a way we can do it. Again, I would not recommend it. That would not be something I would have clients do, but with some tweaking, we can make it work. But at the end of the day, you are going to just not feel great in that process. And big picture here, that's what happens with most people in their fat loss diet, is they go at it from just a calorie standpoint, and they try to fit in as much tasty food as they can. And they don't feel great. They don't have it set up in a way that's structured to allow them to, because it's that you got to walk this fine line of getting you into a deficit, but making sure that the deficit is manageable for you. Because if it's not, then it's a very short-term thing, and it's going to be hard to stick with, so you're not actually going to be in a deficit. And then two, it's long-term really hard to stick with, so you don't actually lose enough body fats. You could lose some weight in a short amount of time, but again, some of that's going to be lean body mass, water weight, etc. And so you don't actually losing body fat is going to take some time. So you need to, like, the magic combo is getting into a deficit that you can sustain. It's a large enough deficit and you can sustain that for extended periods of time, because that's when you're really going to drop body fat. We're talking at least 6 to 10 weeks there. So hopefully that makes sense. Now, somebody followed this up with next level, how to lose weight with zero movement and an all chocolate diet. Again, this can be done. You just need to expend more energy than you can consume, but your caloric intake is going to be very low and you'll be lacking a lot of essential nutrients and macros. And you could lose weight, but you'll also lose muscle in this process and you'll feel terrible in every possible way. So again, the fundamental rule of calories in, calories out still counts here. And this is why we can't ignore that. But again, what we do with the calories that we take in are going to play a huge role here. So again, somebody that gets no movement at all, which I don't know how you would do that. You would get some, but let's say absolutely the bare minimum amount of movement. Again, you're not going to feel good. Your total daily energy expenditure is going to be low because you're lacking protein. Also, your body, you just would not be in a good spot, right? Because you're lacking protein. Now, again, you could do that in the short term, but long term, it's really going to catch up to you here. Again, could be done, but you're going to feel even worse. I would not recommend this to anybody. All right. So next question on fat loss is, how long do your clients typically stay in fat loss? And so this is a good question, but it also is it depends, right? People think there's this kind of black or white. Hey, you need to be in a fat loss phase this long, you need to be in a building phase, et cetera, whatever it means, right? What are the exact times? And we need to base it off of, we need to start to rethink this and we need to think it off of what's your goal? How lean are you getting? What's the rate of the deficit, right? These are going to be the variables that are going to determine how long we're in it. So again, this is going to depend on one, how lean do you want to get? Because again, the leaner you want to get and you're starting from a less leaner spot, the longer you're going to have to be, right? You can't just magically lose that in 2 weeks. So the more body fat you want to lose, again, generally the longer it's going to be. But also your current body comp and biofeedback is going to be super important too, right? So if you are really high body fat and you want to get super lean, that's going to really impact how long we're in it because you're likely going to have to do some diet breaks in between there before you get to that point. And even as you get leaner and leaner, you might need to do a diet break as well too, anyways, even if you are, say, moderately, like you're like in the gray zone of you're not overly fat, but you have some to lose there. You still may need to do a diet break. So it's going to really depend on that. And then your biofeedback, how are you feeling in the process? If we're going at a rate that's pretty quick and you're starting to feel some diet fatigue, or you have something come up and you just feel fatigue overall because you have a lot going on, then that's going to shorten that time and may need to take a diet break. But also, again, like hunger, cravings, energy levels, house training performance, these are all kind of biofeedback, digestion. Like these are all things that we want to take into consideration. And that's going to determine how long we're actively dropping body fat. Okay. So what I will say is most fat loss phases are going to be about 6 to 24 weeks, but someone who goes slower and is at a higher body fat could go much longer than that, right? So if you start at a higher body fat, you go slow, you may go way past that 24 weeks. So it really depends on your methods and how you go about it. Now, somebody who goes a lot quicker, you might not be able to be in that deficit for as long, but you will obviously lose a little bit more body fat in that process. But again, because you're going faster, it's a larger depth, like you may accumulate more fatigue, mental and physical fatigue there. And then plus we throw in diet breaks and refeeds and that could extend the process. So again, it's the thought of, in the moment, a diet break or refeed would slow things down. But in the long run, because you slow that down and you make sure you're in a good spot versus just pushing it, you can stay in that deficit longer and really see the fat loss that you want to see there. And what I will say on this is that eventually I want to get clients to the point to where a fat loss diet no more than 3 to 6 months or less out of the year. So ideally we get to the points where you don't need a fat loss diet very long. Now, again, initially you may have to diet for fat loss a little bit more often and longer just because, again, you have a little bit more body fat. But once we get you to the right range, ideally we're not fat loss dieting any more than that anymore. So it really does just depend on what that looks like there. So somebody asked, why can't you just fat loss diet year round? One, your performance would suffer in the gym. And again, if we're wanting to look our best, we need to make sure performance and training is in a good spot. So if you're always trying to fat loss diet, your performance is going to suffer at some point. Second, mentally, it's going to be draining if you're always trying to fat loss diet. And we need to be careful with this. If you get yourself in this perpetual fat loss diet that you're either on or you're off, right? And what I mean by that is the longer you try and fat loss diet, the more likely this is to happen where you're on for a couple weeks and then you're completely off. And then from there, you just feel like you always need it. Then to me, you're always fat loss dieting, even though you're not actually dropping weight, but mentally you're always fat loss dieting. And that's a problem. Again, that's going to be mentally draining. You're going to start to develop a poor relationship with diet and exercise. And so that's another reason more so from a mental standpoint. Again, we're not going to be setting ourselves up for the best long-term body comp. Again, for the reasons I talked about, your performance is going to suffer. You're just not going to put your body in the best spot to feel good and be at its perform and just be at its best from a metabolism standpoint. And in turn, that's going to impact your body comp long-term, like your ability to have more muscle and to have less body fat. Your metabolism is going to adapt over time as well, too. If you are actively dropping body weight and you keep trying to drop more and you just want to keep getting leaner and you wanting to keep getting leaner and you actually are sticking to your caloric amount, you're not on for 5 days out of the week, and then 2 or 3 days out of the week you're off and you're not actually in a deficit. You just think you are, but from an actual caloric standpoint, you're not. But again, if you're actively continuing to try and drop weight, like your metabolism is going to drop and adapt to that. Now, you can adapt it back up, but you have to be okay with not seeing your scale weight go down and not being your absolute lowest all the time. So again, when our metabolism adapts to what we're doing to it, this can lead to some other issues down the line, like thyroid can decrease. Now that's going to impact your gut health. When gut health is impacted, now that's going to impact your hormones, right? You're going to get some hormone dysregulation. You may not be absorbing all the nutrients. So now we're leading to micronutrient deficiencies, which is going to lead to other issues, right? So it's this vicious cycle of where if we're always trying to eat low calorie, that can you can run into some issues long term, right? Your biofeedback's going to go down the drain. You're going to feel less energy. You're going to be hungrier. You're going to have more cravings. You're just not going to feel good from as good as you could from day to day if we're always just trying to fat loss diet and push things down, right? And those are going to be the main, most important ones here. I'm actually going to pull up. So I made a post on what happens when you're scared to increase calories and cling to your lowest week or peak leanness 24/7. Again, lower metabolic rate and thyroid function equals lower energy, lower TDE, poor gym performance, less muscle growth and training adaptations, more frustrations, right? Micronutrient deficiencies. You can feel like crap, cravings go up, can lead to other long-term issues, dysregulated sex hormones, weakened immune system, right? So more cold, slower recovery, higher stress load, instant food focus, more anxiety, less freedom in life. And so really you're just stalled progress, right? And then with the metabolism thing too, if you're clinging to your lowest body weight, like you don't want to see it come up a pound at all, or anytime you see it come up a pound, you go back to fat loss dieting, which again to me is a year-round fat loss dieting. You're going to find that you have this and this comes back to your metabolism being adapted. You're going to have this artificially low maintenance calories, which sucks, right? Again, your body's not going to be in the best position to want to add muscle, to perform its best, and to just not see all these things that I talked about, right? So that's why we don't want a fat loss diet year round. We want to take some time. This doesn't mean you need to gain weight. Again, you might see your scale weight come up a few pounds, but we want to make sure we at least get to maintenance and we get out of that fat loss dieting. And this is, again, really what I focus on in the performance recomp method is we're basing all fat loss off of where you're currently at, how you're feeling, and then we go from there. You've been fat loss dieting for 5 months already. Things have plateaued. Let's maybe bring your calories to maintenance, really maximize that. And then when we go back to fat loss, you're going to be more effective and efficient versus trying to go uphill with everything. That's where I just see people get themselves into trouble when they get to this year-round fat loss dieting is they just body comp change then becomes this uphill battle, and every little bit of progress you have to go uphill with, right? Whereas if we can flip that, we can actually spend some time feeling our body, not too much, but feeling the right amount, working on lifestyle factors. We don't have to do this anymore, and you feel much better, and your body composition actually, like your body becomes receptive again to body comp change there. All right. And then the last question I had on, I guess one other thing is that I want to go over now. In saying all this, there is nothing inherently wrong with low calories. Again, it's likely going to be necessary that you're going to have to go fairly low calorie to lose body fat. You're not going to be able to lose body fat on 2,800 calories for most people. Again, if you're someone who's done the legwork of building some muscle, really dialing in your habits, optimizing your metabolism, you may find that you could be a little bit higher than compared to someone who's always tried a fat loss diet. But at the end of the day, like if you're 5'1", 120 pounds, it's like if you want to get leaner, you're going to have to go on pretty low calories in most situations, right? So again, they are necessary if you want to lose body fat. But the problem isn't the calorie deficit itself. It's how you go about it, right? Low calories become a problem when you're trying to live on them indefinitely to maintain a certain body weight. We talked about that, right? You're not fueling with nutrient-dense foods or enough protein. So we need to make sure we're getting enough micronutrients in. But the problem becomes if you're, like we talked about, your metabolism can downregulate or can adapt to what you're doing to it. You could have gut health issues, and that could lead to you not absorbing enough food, right? But again, we want to make sure we get enough protein. You never take breaks or phases to recover and eat at maintenance. So we talked about that. You're combining it with high training volume and no recovery. So again, you're like trying to go super low calorie, but do a ton of training. Like that's going to be an issue. A lot of people think going low calorie is dangerous, or my body's going to go into starvation mode, or I'll ruin my metabolism. But the truth is a calorie deficit done strategically is not going to wreck your body. It won't destroy your metabolism, and it's not unsafe. It's how fat loss works, right? Like you're going to have to go fairly low calorie. But when done right, you'll drop fat, you'll maintain muscle, and you actually feel better as you reach a body fat level that supports energy, performance, and long-term health. So again, low calories aren't the issue. It's how you go about it, right? So I don't want anybody to think that's the case. So if we structure it right and we do it strategically, it's totally like you're going to have to do it to drop body fat, right? But where people run into issues is they do all those things or they just white knuckle it, and that's a big problem. And lastly, somebody asked about fast versus slow weight loss. Which one's right for you? Again, faster weight loss, let's think 500 plus calories below maintenance. So that's going to be a larger deficit, right? So you're going to lose weight quicker. With that, the pro is it's faster fat loss, quicker changes in appearance, can work well for short focus phases. So we have to look at the timing of it. And it's motivating early on because you'll see the scale drop, right? Now, the cons of it is higher risk of body using muscles energy, especially combined with poor training and nutrition methods, and if you're at lower body fat levels, you can higher risk of losing muscle, greater chance of nutrient deficiencies because you're bringing in less food. So more fatigue, irritability, poor recovery, and that downstream effect there. It doesn't pair well with high volume and high intensity training. So if you're trying to do a ton of high intensity training, high volumes of that, you're going to burn out, and it's not great for performance goals. So if we do a faster weight loss, larger deficit, we have to do it strategically, right? And so this is going to be best for individuals with higher levels of body fat, men around 15 to 20% body fat for shorter durations, but we need biofeedback to be our guiding factor. We probably need to use days or weeks at maintenance calories more often in this process, okay? You really need to focus on your inputs here. You always do, but more so here. Good nutrition habits, enough protein, maybe a little bit more than normal, good sleep, circadian health, managing overall stress load on the body, and the right environment are all going to be the things from an input perspective that you need to have. And I think this is generally better for men versus women. Women just have a little bit higher stress response to lower calories and just a lack of energy in general. Slower weight loss, we're thinking 300 to 500 calories or less below your maintenance. So a smaller deficit, a little bit slower weight loss. One, the pro is it's easier to support performance in the gym. Still not as good as it would be at maintenance or a small surplus, but it is better. Fewer recovery issues, lower risk of hormonal or micronutrient disruptions, aka you feel better. Slight potential for muscle gain, especially in newer lifters or high body fats, or someone who used to have suboptimal methods, right? Like if you are in that category, you definitely have a good potential to build muscle. But again, it's not going to be as good as it would be at maintenance or a small surplus in terms of adding muscle in a deficit. Can be a bit more flexible with nutrition choices, which is nice. Now, the cons is one, slower changes on the scale and potentially in the mirror, longer time out of building, right, at maintenance or a small surplus. And you eventually can get to the point where if you stay here too long, your body may adapt to this caloric amount and you end up with an artificially lower maintenance intake. But again, this is reversible, right? And what I mean by that is if you're always in this like slow kind of seeing your weight trend down and maybe like things start to really slow down, people tend to just stay there and they get this artificially low maintenance calories. Like they end up decreasing their maintenance calories by 200 to 300, but that's adaptable and it can go back up. And again, this is going to be best for women due to hormones and overall stress response to deficits, individuals at lower body fat levels, and anyone prioritizing training performance and working out a lot. If you are going to go the fast approach, I think the two things that you need is you need enough protein and good lifestyle habits in place to do that. So again, there is no right or wrong way to go about fast versus slow. It depends on your current body comp, goals, preference, lifestyle, stress load, etc. But the key is that fat loss isn't a forever thing, right? So I think that's a big takeaway from all these questions. Eventually you should and need to get to the point where you feel enough. It doesn't have to be a surplus, but just enough. You also don't have to be locked into one approach. Maybe for the first few weeks, you go more aggressive and then you dial back or vice versa. It's safer from a body comp perspective to be a bit more aggressive with weight loss than weight gain. So again, we can be a bit more aggressive on seeing our scale weight trend down, especially if your methods are in line. But if we go super quick, seeing our scale weight come up, we're likely just going to gain a lot of body fat. Lastly, a faster approach is tough to maintain for multiple weeks on end. So most people end up under a 300 to 500 calorie deficit or less over time. So even if you try it, just understand that it's hard to do and you likely fall under the slower weight loss because it's tough to do there. Hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully I gave you more insight into fat loss phases. If you have any questions on this or you have further questions on fat loss, just reach out to me on Jeff, HOEHN _. That's where I'm most active on social media. So make sure you follow me there and you can ask me any questions on this. If you found this podcast to be helpful in any way, if you could leave a rating and review, and that will help more people find it. Again, I appreciate everybody who listens. But that's it for this episode. I'll chat with you guys next time.